Okay, we're back at it, chapter 6. Addison, I'm glad you're liking it. I hope the boys are listening too. Here we go. Cole's clothes felt damp and stiff when he picked them up from where he'd left them on the shoreline. As he struggled to pull them on, he chuckled. He couldn't quit thinking about the Circle Justice meetings. He still remembered how surprised the group had been when he called his dad a liar. Every eye in the group had focused on his father, who had turned red and stammered angrily. We have devoted our lives to Cole. All you care about is you," Cole interrupted. "Look how you're dressed. Nobody else here is—" "That's not true," protested his father. He grabbed Cole's arm roughly, but then let go. He glared at Cole and pointed the feather right in his face. "You control your mouth, son, or you'll what?" Cole taunted. "Beat me?" Cole's father jumped to his feet. "I don't beat you, and you know that." His face flushed red. "I've given you swats when you've deserved them." The keeper stepped forward into the center of the circle and held up her hand, but Cole ignored her. "You're still lying," he shouted. "You're usually just too drunk to know your own name." Cole knew these words guaranteed him a terrible beating the next time he was alone, but still he taunted his father with a smirk. He didn't plan on there being any next time. The first chance he had, he would run away. Again, the keeper held up her hand for order, but Cole's father raised his voice even louder. "I've given you every—" Nathaniel Blackwood reached up and pulled Cole's father forcefully back to his seat. The keeper stepped forward and held her hand out for the feather. "Please," she said firmly. The gentle calm had left her voice and face. Her chin was rigid. Embarrassed, Cole's father surrendered the feather. The keeper turned and spoke to the whole circle. "We must respect the feather. This symbolizes respect for others and respect for ourselves." As if handling a priceless gem, the keeper then handed the feather carefully to Cole. "Now you may speak." Cole tried to be calm, but his voice shook and his face felt hot. "We aren't supposed to lie when we hold the feather, but my dad just lied. My parents don't have the time of day for me. I'm just in their way, especially since they split up. I bet my dad can't even tell you when my birthday is." Cole grabbed a deep breath to control himself. He turned to his mother and placed the feather in her lap. "Mom, tell them how Dad beats on me when he's drunk." Cole's mother dusted imaginary specks off of her dress and then picked up the feather hesitantly. She opened her mouth to speak, but a quick glance at her husband brought a frightened look to her eyes, and she quickly passed the feather on to Garvey without saying anything. Garvey held the feather and pursed his lips with a troubled stare. "I don't know how life gets so mixed up," he began. "Some juvenile delinquents become our most successful citizens, while others crowd our prisons. What's the difference?" He paused. "Cole has will and courage, but he also has ugly anger. So what do we do with him? Do any of us know what caused that anger? And what if those same events had happened to each of us? How would we have reacted?" He paused for an uncomfortably long moment. A muted murmur rippled around the circle. "Seriously," Garvey said, turning first to Peter and then to Cole, "I don't know how to heal emotional and physical damage. Scars run deep." Garvey stared intently at Cole's father, who sat unflinching. "I do know this. Cole isn't the only problem here tonight. He is only a symptom of a family and a community that has somehow broken down. If we can't find solutions, we all fail. We all share the guilt, and we all pay a terrible price." Nobody had anything more to say until the feather reached Peter's lawyer. The woman faced Cole directly. "We don't know all the reasons for Cole's anger, but we do know he's out of control. Any solution found by this circle must protect society and make Cole totally responsible for his actions." She handed the feather to Peter's mother. Peter's mother also turned to look straight at Cole. "Because of you, I have a son now who," and her voice broke, "I have a son who has speech and coordination problems. He wakes up at night screaming with nightmares. 5 years, 10 years, even 100 years of jail can't change that. But never again should any other parent have to worry about this happening to their child. Not sending you to jail would be a huge mistake." Cole sat tight-lipped. The jail talk was getting old. If he was going to end up in jail anyway, then he might as well have gone through normal justice and avoided all of this circle baloney. Suddenly he wanted out of this place. If only there weren't a guard waiting in the hallway. Cole slouched low in his chair as the feather passed on to Peter. Peter gripped the feather with a tight fist and looked down at his lap. When a full minute had passed, the keeper walked around and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Peter, would you like to tell us what you think would make things better again?" Peter bit at his lips before speaking in a struggling, slurred voice. "I think someone should smash Cole's head against a sidewalk so he knows how it feels." Uneasy glances followed Peter's comment. Even the keeper's voice sounded tense as she took the feather gently from Peter's hand and returned to her place in the circle. "Tonight, raw feelings have been exposed like plowed up ground," she said. "But that's when you plant seeds. We now understand better the struggle we face and share the desire to find a solution. Let's stand and hold hands again." 3 hours after it had begun, the keeper closed the healing circle with a prayer. Cole stood, but refused to hold his parents' hands. He folded his arms defiantly across his chest, causing a break in the circle. On his left stood a liar who had beat him numb, and on his right stood a dressed-up puppet afraid of her own shadow. Cole would not let them hold his hands and feel how sweaty they were. He would not let them pretend they loved him, especially his dad. If the keeper noticed Cole's actions, she did not show it. When the prayer was finished, Cole's parents and their lawyer immediately began putting on their coats to leave. Cole's guard entered the room and took hold of Cole's elbow, motioning toward the door. But Cole jerked his arm free. "I can walk by myself." And with one swift movement, The guard pulled handcuffs from his belt and clipped Cole's wrist behind his back. Others from the circle turned to watch. "What's that for?" Cole asked loudly. "You had your choice," the guard said. Before they could leave, Garvey walked up. "You're not buying into this circle stuff, are you, champ?" Cole sneered at Garvey. "So now you can read minds, huh?" Garvey shook his head. "Actions speak louder than words." "Whose side are you on anyway?" Cole said. Cole's father, standing nearby, overheard Cole's remark. "Son, this isn't about choosing sides. This is about learning responsibility." Before Cole could answer, Garvey said, "Yes, Mr. Matthews, this is about responsibility. By the way, when is your son's birthday?" Cole's father gulped a quick breath, and his face grew flushed. Well, birthdays have never been a very big thing around our house," he stammered. "I think it's the beginning of July sometime." Quickly, he turned and left. "Did you hear him lie tonight when he was holding the feather?" Cole asked Garvey. "Well, he wasn't the only one," Garvey said, heading for the door. Thinking about the Circle Justice meetings brought Cole's anger alive once more. If Garvey or Edwin or anybody else showed their ugly faces on the island now, they better watch out. Cole swatted at the persistent mosquitoes and studied the bay. His only mistake in trying to escape had been forgetting about the incoming tide. Next time, he would wait until the tide flowed outward. He would use the current to help carry him away from this armpit place. Cole walked over to the small clear stream flowing out from the trees at the head of the bay. The canopy of trees and vines, deadfall, and undergrowth formed a wall of dark green vegetation that would have been hard to crawl through. How did the spirit bear move like a ghost through such tangled forest? Cole knelt on the slippery rocks and drank until the chalky dryness left his mouth. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but he ignored it. If he had to, he'd eat raw fish or grass. He'd eat anything if it helped get him off of this island. Returning to the ashes, Cole noticed faint smoke curling up from one mound. He dug carefully with a stick until he found hot coals. And then he scrounged dry twigs from under the tree branches. Steady blowing soon coaxed a weak flame to life. This time, he would leave with his body warm and his belly full of food. Heavy dark clouds crowded the far horizon, but clear sky overhead let the sun bathe the ground with warmth. Cole leaned his head back to soak in the sunshine. Garvey had said this area had tons of rain. What did he know, living in Minnesota? There'd been a few light showers yesterday and during the night, but now the weather was great, and for the next few hours Cole sat on the shore and studied the tide. Once the breeze ruffled the tree branches behind him, and Cole spun around expecting the spirit bear again. But he saw only a couple of big gray birds hopping among the branches. He snickered at how jumpy he was. What was he afraid of? The spirit bear wouldn't show itself now that it knew a human was around. It was the one that should be scared. Cole discovered that high tide occurred midday and began flowing out of the bay within an hour. He knew that tides repeated themselves every 12 hours, which meant the next receding tide would be late tonight, and then another this time tomorrow. Reluctantly, Cole admitted it would be best to leave tomorrow. He didn't want to swim at night. He almost wished he could be here to see the faces of Garvey and Edwin when they returned and found him gone and everything burned to the ground. Man, his dad's reaction would be even better. "What are you going to do, Dad?" Cole asked, as if his dad were sitting beside him on the rocks. "Who are you going to sue? Who are you going to hit?" Cole knew what his dad hated most about this whole situation was that his son wasn't something that could be fixed with a lawsuit or a stiff drink. The only solution was to hit Cole harder, and that hadn't helped either. Cole remembered once when he had disobeyed his father and come home late. After being strapped until his skin was raw with welts, he watched in horror as his dad paused and turned the belt around with his big knuckled hands. "Ya think life's a game? You think you're in charge? You think I'm a big joke?" his father shouted as he started hitting Cole again, this time with the metal buckle end. Again and again Cole had screamed, Don't! I'm sorry I came home late. I'll obey. Please, Dad, don't. Life's not a game. Oh, please. Dad, stop." As Cole kept screaming, his dad kept hitting him. That night was the only time Cole's mom ever said anything in his defense. She came to the doorway, a drink in her hand. "Honey, you're hurting him," she said. Cole's father spun around to face her. "You mind your own business or I'll use this thing on you." Cole's mother retreated down the hall, but the strapping stopped. Cole stood and stretched. Going to an island had seemed like a good idea after being locked up for 3 months. Now it just seemed stupid. It was mainly Garvey's fault. After the 5th circle meeting, when Cole had grown frustrated by all the references to jail, he had finally pleaded with the circle members. "Why can't you just believe me when I say I'm sorry and I won't ever hurt anybody again?" Peter's lawyer had asked for the feather. "All your life you've lied, manipulated people, and tried to avoid consequences," she said. "There is absolutely no reason to believe that you have truly changed inside." "Great. Then just get rid of me," Cole said. "Send me someplace where I'm not in your face and can't hurt anyone. But why do I have to go to jail?" "Cole has a point," said Garvey. "Maybe there is some place other than prison." "Any place he goes, there will be people that he could assault," Peter's mother said. "It's not like we can ship Cole to the Arctic Circle." Garvey's face came alive with thought, and he asked for the feather again. "I'm a native Tlingit," he said. "I was raised in southeast Alaska. It is possible that I could make arrangements to have Cole banished to a remote island on the Inland Passage. This is something First Nation people have done for hundreds of years. Cole could undergo a vision quest of sorts and extended time alone to face himself and to face the angry spirits inside of him." "Would anybody be with him?" asked the keeper. "No." Garvey shook his head. "Occasionally an elder would check on him. What makes banishment work is the extreme isolation. It allows the offender to spend a long period free from all friends, drugs, alcohol, and other influences that have gotten them into trouble. It's a time to think." "For how long?" asked Judge Tanner, his voice edged with skepticism. "Well, perhaps a year." Peter's mother motioned for the feather. "Well, okay, let's say Cole is sentenced to some island for a year. What happens after that year if he hasn't changed? Would he go free to hurt somebody else's child?" Garvey shook his head. "Banishment isn't a sentence. It's simply a time for Cole to walk his talk. We tell him to give more than lip service to the idea of change, but what chance does he have to prove anything if he's locked up? Sentencing would be delayed until the end of Cole's banishment, and then this same circle could re-evaluate him and decide whether he has walked his talk and whether a sentence is still necessary. "What do you think of this idea?" the keeper asked Cole. Cole shrugged. "I've spent lots of time outside. It's not like I couldn't take care of myself." He turned to Garvey. "But could I still end up going to jail after spending a whole year on some island?" "Well, that would be totally up to you," Garvey said. "You keep asking for a chance to prove that you've changed. Well, if you have nothing to worry about." Cole tried not to show it, but he was plenty worried. Suddenly, everybody seemed to motion for the feather at once. Rapidly, the feather worked its way around the circle. The air bristled with comments and questions, and by the time the keeper finished her closing prayer that night, everyone had agreed that Garvey should explore to see whether the plan might actually work. After the meeting, Garvey motioned Cole aside. "You do know that banishment is much harder than in a jail cell, don't you?" he said. "Well, then what's the point?" Cole asked. If you go to jail, I won't bet a nickel on your future. So what's so hard about living on some island for a while?" Garvey smiled knowingly. "Go ahead, try it. Try manipulating a storm or lying to your hunger. Try cheating the cold." Chapter 7 is next. If I'm remembering it right, it's really, really good. Probably the best chapter so far.